Hey folks, welcome back to FreepCast. My name is Rob Murray. I'm your host. I'm here as always with Joe Spear, the managing editor. We got a full table today. We also have sports editor Chad Courier, first time guest here in the podcast, and photographer Casey Eck. We're going to jump into some news headlines, and the first story we will talk about today is the hotel. Joe, what happened with that?
Yeah, last night City Council passed the grand $92 million hotel deal for the former location of the Holiday Inn, and they got announced that state gave them $1 million yesterday to clean up the site, so that was part of the news. And then the City Council voted on the subsidy package, which was $11 million, and one of the biggest ever in the history of Mankato. The development is one of the biggest ever in the history of Mankato, $92 million. And the tax increment financing package, right? We all learned what that was when we were in our first year as a journalist, right?
Well, we might know what it is, but you might want to explain it to the folks at home.
That's exactly what I was just going to do.
Okay.
So a project is built, and it gets an upfront subsidy from the city, and then the taxes generated by that project help pay off that loan. So the city kind of gives up collecting taxes for 10, or in this case, I think it's 15 or 20 years. It's one of the longest ones.
So for people like me who don't understand money, the project doesn't pay taxes for whatever number of years.
Correct. It goes to the increment. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then so no money from other taxpayers comes in for the project, right? So it's kind of a self-financing project. It's kind of like giving them a loan and then having it paid back with the taxes they would have paid. And the argument is there would be no taxes coming in from this property if they didn't do it. So, and I think that's what one of the councilors asked Susan Arntz, the city manager, what happens if we didn't do this? And she said you would have a major piece of development that would continue to deteriorate, as we know it has. In fact, a couple of weeks ago, some bricks fell down on a utility line. Just the building was kind of falling apart. So big development. Looks like another step toward a huge project. Still some hurdles along the way, probably, that we'll find out about. But so far, it's a green light, and it sounds like they're going to be starting demolition this fall. And then the two projects are these major hotels. One's a Marriott, one's a Westin, I believe. And they have a similar setup at the Mall of America. If you ever want to go look at the hotels, these are identical to the Mall of America hotels that are set up there. One's a tower hotel, 10 stories, and the other one's kind of a longer stay, 4-story hotel. So it adds 280 rooms, I think, downtown. A lot of people think that'll really be great for sports, Maverick hockey, for drawing people to conventions and such. So big deal.
So just to be clear, is it really a loan or is it a gift?
Well,
because they're not paying those taxes, right?
Right.
For 15 years.
Correct. So
and they don't got to pay any of that back.
Right. The taxes pay what they're getting borrowed. So
it's more of a gift.
It's kind of a gift, yeah. So that was a big story. Another big story we just had yesterday, and I'll turn to Casey about this. You know, they announced that the Dakota 38 ride that they've had traditionally for many, many years in Mankato, and it was kind of like, we're maybe not doing it last year, or there was a small version of it last year. And now, Casey, they've kind of announced that they're going to do it. And the route is going to be a little different, but why don't you give us the rundown on that?
Yeah, so I'm not the spokesperson about the ride, but as far as I understand it, they are deciding to do a successor. So it is distinct from the Dakota 38 plus 2 ride. It'll be called something. I don't want to call it the wrong thing, so I won't say what it's called. You can read about it in our paper yesterday, but basically it's going to be geared toward the youth, the next generation of young Dakota people who are horse riders. I spoke to Wilfred Keeble, who is our source for that story. He's an elder with the Dakota and a former staff carrier for the Dakota 38 plus 2 ride. And he says it's going to be, he had mentioned the healing power of the horses, and he wants to continue that through the younger generation who are learning to ride and learning to respect these animals and learning a little bit about their history along the way.
And the photo you had was of the elder and the grandkids in the background. Who was that? That was
Wilfred. Yeah. So
Wilfred, okay.
so I met Wilfred a couple of years back. So I was along for the final Dakota 38+2 ride. So I followed him from South Dakota to Mankato. Not every single day. I had some obligations here and there, but pretty much the whole time. And I met Wilfred and a lot of his grandkids and other family members of his. And so I met those two that were pictured behind him. So with that picture, I wanted to emphasize this multi-generational facet of that.
Yeah, that was cool. I like that. And tell us about the route, how it's a little different.
So they're going to go to areas like Jeffers Petroglyphs and other sites kind of in southwestern Minnesota, similar to where they went for the Dakota 38+2 ride, but slightly different because they want to emphasize some of the traditional village sites of the Dakota. So along the way, they'll often stop for sort of lectures from the elders telling the younger people about their history. So I'm imagining that will be part of it, where they'll stop, say near Jeffers, and explain why it's a significant place for the Dakota.
That is really cool way to do it. Are they still starting in South Dakota?
That's my understanding. I'll get back to you on that.
Yeah, and it will it be about the same length of ride time it takes?
Yeah, that's another good question. I know that they're going to be culminating on December 26th in downtown Mankato, which was traditionally for the last 17 years of the Dakota 38+2 ride, the spot where they would stop and everybody, the public could engage in that ride. So that is still the plan. As far as the overall length, that's a good question. I'll talk to Wilfred about that.
It's such a cool event. It's such a powerful event. Rob, I know you've probably gotten in on covering some of them over the 30 plus years we've been here. And the horses are so powerful. And what do you remember about just covering this or this event in general?
This is one of the events over my long career at the Free Press that I've never covered.
Is that right? Yeah. Wow. We're going to get you out there this year then. You're it.
Yeah. I'm all right. If I get my arm healed up in time, I'm happy to be out there.
Lots of time for that.
Mm-hmm.
But so cool. Of course, one of the really big stories of last week was Governor Tim Walz, a vice presidential candidate, came to Mankato for the East-West game, the East-West Jug game, the classic game that is Mankato football. And, of course, we know Coach Walz was a coach on the 1999 West championship team and came back. And we first heard about it through the city, school district, I should say, saying, there's a bunch more restrictions on the East-West game up at MSU and related to, quote unquote, a high profile visitor. And, the word was out, and Chad, I'm sure through you called me that morning and heard that it was probably Walz. And how did you hear from your sources, or just from you kind of people were intimating it or suggesting it or giving you the wink, wink?
Yeah. The West Athletic Director contacted me and said, any electronics you want to bring to the game, you're going to have to check in early that day. And it just sounded odd to me that we would have to take our laptop, or Case would have to take his camera up to Blakesley, leave it sit there all day. But, so I called a couple more people, and finally I found out about the high-profile guest, and it's pretty obvious who it was, or at least it was going to be a member of the Walz family, just kind of changing the whole dynamic of the security issue. And, the East-West football game is probably, if I had to pick one day on the calendar that would be my favorite day of the year working, it's the East-West football game. It's a great event. Blakesley's a great place to have it. People get so excited about it, and there's so much tradition. The kids get into it and everything, and it's just one of my favorite days. And then I started thinking about, wow, I really hope this visit doesn't take away from the kids, because these kids have been dreaming about this game ever since they put the helmet on. And you sure didn't want, things to not happen, like a post-game rush to the field. Something as simple as that. It's one of the great traditions of that game. Students run out on the field, celebrate with the players in the jug, and I'm thinking, well, maybe they can't now because Tim's there and security's there. And, I was hoping it wasn't going to get in the way. And it really didn't. I mean, I don't know what happened off the field, but I was up at the stadium. I got up there at like 5 o'clock just so I could get a place to park and get some work done because I didn't have my laptop all day. And it really didn't interfere with anything. Pregame coin toss, Tim comes in, waves to everybody, sits in the crowd. I mean, there was some focus taken away from the game, but those are people that were up there to see Walz. They weren't up there to see East-West football anyway. So, it really turned out to be a nice night.
I like how we were trying to, as soon as we heard about how high-profile guest, I emailed the Walz campaign in Minnesota and said, hey, we're hearing about this. Should we know anything more about this? Do you have anything more for us? And Holly Marie Moore was our reporter on the scene, also up there, as was Casey. Just had 2 reporters there as well as Chad. So we just didn't want to miss anything, obviously, on a big profile event like this. And I think at 7 o'clock, maybe 6 o'clock, we got a notification from the Walz campaign. Holly got a text saying, it was kind of funny because they said, well, this is on deep background. And those who don't know journalism canons, this is one of the deals you have with people who you have sources with. You have, on the record, for attribution, for background, and these are different layers of what you can say. The source will tell you, and deep background is like the deepest thing. You can't say anything. You can't attribute it to anybody. And so she said, oh, can we take it on deep background? I said, go ahead. So we took on deep background all the details of Walz was going to be there, what he was going to do, what he was going to say, what it was, and it was still deep background. So I'm going like, you mean we can't say any of this stuff even though you've given it to us? So I don't know if the PR person didn't really know what deep background means, but we had a call. Holly called him back and said, just so you know for sure, we're using all this in print and we're attributing it to the campaign. And she says, yeah, it was embargoed till like 7 o'clock. So we had to wait till 7 o'clock. So eventually we got the story. But a little side note on that, and a big event that everybody was kind of scrambling. And Casey, from your perspective, how did your day play out on that?
So I, like Chad, I didn't have my laptop. I didn't have my camera, so I was pretty much, I could have shot, say a fire broke out with my cell phone, I guess. But so I was pretty much hamstringed for the whole day. So I got up there pretty early myself. And when I got there, I said, hey, who do I check in with? And it was a little bit more informal than you might expect. But there might have just been a perception that it was informal because they weren't going to tell you why they had you standing someplace. They weren't going to say, hey, we're having you stand here because he's entering at 6 p.m. because they don't want to give that operational security away so easily to somebody they're just meeting. And so it had the sort of perception of an informal day, but I think it was there was a lot more details behind the scenes, that's for sure. But as far as where I was working and how I had to operate, it was a little bit of just trusting that that you're just going to get it. And then you just have to kind of hope that you're at the right spot and just kind of firing from the hip sometimes and trust your instincts and some of your training.
And we had this kind of confusion about pool photography. I had no idea that other photographers were going to be in access to certain things with Walz. I think you said down at the school because he was down there, and maybe that's where he gave the pep talk. And we knew nothing about that. So usually a pool photographer situation is one photographer, Strib, or somebody, in this case, I think it was Strib and Public Radio, shoot all the photos in the kind of the secure areas, and then they share them with all other media. So we did get that, but we knew nothing about Walz being anywhere. So it wasn't the greatest communication for the hometown paper.
Right, and I understand too. They want to keep it close to their chest. It's a security thing, right? He's a high-profile guest. So at the end of the day, I do understand it. It just it was not easy to grapple with in real time in a high-stressful situation when you, meanwhile, also have to shoot a football game.
Exactly. Chad, did you hear anything about what Walz said to the players or anything?
No, nobody was really talking about it. And frankly, by the time that game got over, I didn't have a lot of time to hang around and talk to people.
Right.
But to add to what Casey said, I thought it was very informal. I was expecting, pat down, metal detector. I was up there like 10:30 in the morning, and I walked right in. I parked right in the lot right next to the people putting up tents. Just walked into the stadium. I mean, Agent Hodap's a very serious person. I found that out. But I was with Kevin Beisman, who was MSU's representative there, and we went up and I just said, "Here's my laptop. I need to drop it off." He goes, "All right."
That's pretty much the long and short of it, yeah.
And so, can I get into the press box and leave it there? I don't know. So luckily Kevin was there. He had a key and I could go up and do it. But and then getting back at 5 o'clock, I was expecting a hassle to get in, and I walked right through it. And I will say this is the first time that I can remember ever. And when the game started, nobody was standing in line outside. Every year, as 500 people, all bitching about not getting in on time, the MSU's ticket system, blah, blah, blah. Well, they were all there on time, and it was very smooth, I thought.
I thought so too. Yeah. And it was a packed crowd too, so it's not for lack of
5,000
crowd,
people
right?
probably.
And the school district, I know, put out a press release says at the last minute, no signs, no political signs. You can have football signs, which I'm not sure you can do that, but under the First Amendment. But when it's East-West game, I guess the rules can be.
It was one of the things I was pretty pleased about, because I figured when Tim gets announced, there's going to be people booing in the crowd, or I thought, here comes somebody running onto the field with a sign and protest, and nobody really. I mean, I didn't hear any of that. I mean, maybe there was some light booing. I don't know, because people are pretty opinionated here, but it just didn't get in the way of the kids having their night, which is really what that was all about.
Yeah, and I think Tim Crone's reporting did talk to some people who were disappointed that it shouldn't be about, politicians and Walz, and that it take the focus off the kids. And people are going to have that opinion, so.
It would be great if you could do this and not have cameras with you, because now we're making a political ad. Somebody's making a political ad out of that event, and that's too bad. But yeah, it is what it is. I think Tim's heart's in the right place. He obviously has a love of high school football, love of Mankato West and Mankato East. I mean, he's a Mankato guy, and it really went, I thought, about as well as it could.
I was going to ask about when I heard he was going to give a pep talk to the West team. I wondered if, for political reasons, maybe he would do the East team as well.
I thought about that too.
I thought maybe he was going to talk to everybody once they got up there, both teams together. But the logistics of that wouldn't have played out very well either. So, he was a West guy. I mean, he taught at West. He has connections at West. I was sitting in the press box with a couple of teachers that taught with him, and I mean, it's just what it is.
So, were you covering the team when he was the assistant coach?
Yes, but I couldn't tell you that I wouldn't have known that he was the assistant coach.
Really?
No, I mean, up until 1999, West was a mess in football. I mean, they had low numbers. They didn't win. I knew Rick Sutton very well, but I couldn't tell you one of his assistants. And even if you showed me a team photo right now, I wouldn't probably know any of the assistants, be able to pick them out. And we just didn't pay that much attention to them. And then they went and won a state championship, and now all of a sudden, now we're paying attention. And that was as successful as West has been. That was the day that it all changed, was when they won a state championship. And up until then, I mean, nobody knew anything about the program, really.
Well, and we talked about, we're going to do kind of a recap of the 1999 team, some kind of stories and features later in the season. So that'll be fun to see. I think they released a clip, which I have not seen yet, of the footage from the 99 game the Walz campaign did. And that's supposed to be out there somewhere, so I'm sure we'll secure that.
I think the New York Times has it on the website.
Do they?
Yeah.
Okay. But another thing about that, I heard from a person who was kind of helping at MSU with the logistics and dealt with the Secret Service and dealt with the campaign. And he said they kind of had, conflicting goals. Of course, Secret Service wants to have no line of sight, little exposure as possible. They like the fact of Blakesley because they said it was all concrete, and that's good. Guess you can imagine what that's good for. And then that there were those mounds on the far end of the field that also were helpful in, preventing direct sight lines and that sort of thing.
I'm pretty sure they like that academic building across the way, about a quarter mile on the other side of the stadium where the snipers were sitting.
Yeah.
That was something new for me. I've never. Perhaps there've been snipers looking at me during games before. But,
This
that's
was
none
on
that I saw.
what building were they on? The
I think they're on the science building over there on the top of Armstrong.
way
on the-
back.
Yeah, it's a
there.
quarter mile away.
smokestacks. And so I was wearing these. I have a camera strap that, if you look at it just from behind, it looks like a gun strap. And
Nice,
so I'm
nice.
walking around a little scary, just kind of.
Looking up.
I was surprised there was nobody on top of the field house.
Well, I was going to say that
Maybe
would
you're
be
too close. I don't know.
prime place, or maybe they had that secured, so there was no way anybody could climb up on it like at Butler, Pennsylvania.
Yeah,
and
I would
they
say
watched the guy climb
they've
up.
tried
on,
that before. Yeah, it was.
But it was
weird.
interesting because the campaign, of course, wants maximum exposure and all this stuff. And I guess when the Secret Service heard he wants to do the coin toss, they were like rolling their eyes and, oh my God, right out in the open field. There you go. So how interesting an event with all the commotion. And I just started thinking about it. I mean, I don't think we've ever had a vice presidential or presidential candidate or person in Mankato in a long time. I mean, we had Bush 2004 at the quarry, but that wasn't in Mankato anywhere. The last guy who would have been president come through Mankato was Harry Truman, 1948, on a train. So, I mean, we didn't have experience with
Well, who's the vice president who died here?
Schuyler Colfax.
Schuyler Colfax.
But he was not vice president at the time. He was
Okay.
done. And he was the Speaker of the House, actually, who helped Lincoln get the Emancipation Proclamation passed. So
With Trump at the airport, didn't he come in 2020?
True enough.
Yeah.
there you go. I was forgetting about Trump. So he was at the airport. Yeah.
Well, it won't be the last time if
Yeah.
Walz Harris win. I'm sure Tim will make trips back
Yeah.
in the course of his time in the White House.
One of the points you made, too, is that he must be an interesting individual to run security for just because he is kind of amongst the people a lot and shaking hands. And
He's
and
a
all
hugger.
that. Yeah, so it's
Hugger.
an interesting security problem, I'm
Yeah.
sure.
Well, you could see the
Now,
guys standing behind him when he was near the stands. They were uncomfortable.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they were watching really closely, people reaching out and handing
Oh,
him
yeah.
things. And they were not far away. And like I said, if Agent Honap is any indication, I wasn't about
This was the Secret
I'm
Service
not going to
guy.
make a quick movement or make a bad joke. I tell you that.
So you saw him when you were checking in, or
Yeah.
he chatted with you?
He was
or,
the head of the
Okay.
Secret Service
and he
detail
asked
or something.
what your name is, who are,
No, he
that
didn't
kind
do
of thing,
anything.
what
No,
you're
that
doing
was-
here.
And
Do you have a
maybe 'cause-
credential you had to show?
No, maybe because I was with Kevin.
Okay.
I don't know. As Kevin introduced me to him, and maybe that's all it took. But nothing. I didn't have to go through metal detector at that. I could have stored a weapon. I say that now. I wouldn't have said that on Friday, but I could have stored a weapon up there on Friday. And
Oh, okay. Yeah, let's not get into that too much. We'll be having calls. Well, what about the game itself? Chad, you guys wrote up a preview that looked like this will be the best chance for East to win it in a long time, 18 years on the other side of it. And it didn't go East's way.
no, it sure didn't. First off, they were playing without one of their best players, which makes a difference, but I don't know that it makes that much of a difference. Brogan Madsen was out with a sprained ankle from the previous game, which, by the way, was East's best game of the year, winning at Chanhassen.
Yeah, 43-19, right?
43-19. And it really sets up a difficult seeding process here tomorrow. But so it starts off, they're a little shorthanded, but West just came out and just decided to play bully ball, and we're bigger than you. Stop us if you can.
Ground game.
Yeah, and the first possession, they had 3 straight runs, and I go, well, that's odd. Why would they run it 3 straight times? And then I realized they're going to run it the next 15 straight times. They just pounded it at him, and East didn't have any answer. And it might be that you've lost the team 18 straight times. I mean, that certainly sets into your mentality when you get behind, especially. And
Here we go again.
and here we go again. And it was really East's best chance to win, and West is going to be the favorite the next couple of years. So we're looking at it could be 25 years. Who knows? Although I will say that you never predict the outcome of an East-West game. So
Yeah, and I was looking last week before the game. I believe East was ranked 7 and West was 9. And now I look, I believe West is 8 and East is out of the top 10.
yeah, it's part of the predicament they're going to have when they seed these teams tomorrow, because East, Chanhassen, and West all went 3-1 in section games, each one beating the other. So you got a three-way tie, so to speak, for this section. The way they set up scheduling now, West and Chanhassen played a much more difficult schedule than East. East doesn't have to play the Rogers like West will play this week, or Owatonna or Andover. So West has probably played the toughest schedule in this section, which might end up being the tiebreaker and get them the 1 seed. But East is going to have 6 wins, so there's something to be said for that too, even though 3 of the wins came against lesser competitions.
And could we see a East-West section title game?
Yep. We also could see them both get beat in the first game.
Wow.
I mean, there's 5 teams that are all pretty equal, I think, and it's important how they seed, because 1 is obviously not going to have to, or 2 is going to have to play number 3, which is better than 1 playing 4 in this section by far.
Yeah. And we had a big soccer section finals last night, East in the tournament, both boys and girls.
Yeah, Kevin was up there last night. Long day of soccer. East boys, I think it had been 2012 since they've gotten there, and they've been in the section championship game several times, and a lot of disappointment. And I think you saw the quote from the coach about, I've got a lot of red ribbons from this game, and not very many blue ones.
Yeah.
And I'm happy for Jared, Coach Asplin. He's one of the good guys. He's always been helpful to us. He dutifully reports his results, which you can't say about everybody. Mm-hmm. And he's had a lot of disappointment. They keep bouncing right back, getting a championship game. And finally, in overtime last night, they were able to win, which had to be a real exhilarating victory. 1-0,
Wow.
Sudden death victory. So that good for them. And then the East-West game and the girls, I was at that game in the regular season when West scored twice late to beat them. So obviously there was a little revenge, but I thought East was probably the better team. A few more options offensively, and they got it done. Got it done last night. I think it's their 3rd straight section championship, so they'll be going to the state tournament. I think they finished 3rd last year, or tied for 3rd.
Yeah, it was a really great season from last year.
Yeah, most of those kids graduated, so these are a lot of new kids, and having that success, and we'll see what the seeding process does for them this weekend.
That's great. And Casey, you were up shooting the soccer. What stood out to you about it?
Watching the boys, it looked like they played Marshall, and it looked like it was their game to lose. They had control a lot of the time. Marshall, of course, had some really good chances. Highly competitive game, but just watching from the field, I just saw if East just tightens up some screws, they're going to be an incredibly tough team to beat. There's just a couple things that I think are easy to fix. Just watching some of the communications on field. They looked really good, but if they can just make those small tweaks, man, they're going to be really good. And watching the girls, that was another competitive game as well. And that was one of those games that looked like it could be any moment you kind of expected. I mean, the score is 3-0, but that doesn't necessarily reflect how competitive that game actually was.
Cool. And MSU football is doing well. Let's get the rundown on them.
Yeah, they're off this weekend, so. We don't get to see much. They come back next weekend. They have Augustana at home. If they win that game, which should be very competitive, if they win that game, they're probably an NCAA team, provided they take care of business against some lesser teams the rest of the way. If they don't, then they'll be in a bit of a barn burner over the last 3 games or 4 games, whatever it is. So,
and MSU has been having some great football crowds, haven't they?
Yeah, they 7,000. Two crowds of 7,000 so far this year, and it'll get worse now because the weather gets worse, and people don't want to sit in the snow. But I would guess still by next Saturday the weather will be good. Augustana usually travels well. I'm expecting probably another 6,000 to 7,000 people up there.
A lot of folks from Sioux Falls coming in.
Yep. Plus they recruit the Twin Cities heavily, so a lot of parents that don't have to drive so far on game day.
Great place to watch football, Blakesley. Although it's supposedly we're going to get a new one pretty soon. How long have we been saying that?
Yeah, 20 years. Yeah, somebody else will benefit from that besides me. I'm pretty sure my only step into the new Blakesley Stadium press box will be as a tourist.
Did I see a photo of the press box? I don't think I've ever been up there, but there's like 2x4s, right? It's open wall. It's like your garage.
Can get kind of cold in there too.
It's not even good as your garage.
No, it's not. There's wires everywhere. I mean, when I sit on a Saturday, I've got probably 50 wires running around my feet. And
we get OSHA up there.
Yeah, it's not an exaggeration either.
Absolutely. That place could burn at any minute. And thankfully it will someday, but I'll be the first suspect.
OSHA, are you listening?
The press box could burn, but the rest of the place, solid concrete, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's
That'll never
crumbling,
burn.
though.
That'll
It's
as soon as it
crumbling.
heats up a little bit, it'll crumble.
There's not a better place to watch a football game.
No.
I don't think. You're so close to the action.
Yeah,
That
it's
is
cool.
true.
Yeah, if I didn't have to walk up those stairs to get there and then down the stairs afterwards in a crowd, it wouldn't be near as bad. And Kevin said he was going to take Tim up there and give him a tour of the press box just to see if that would help speed up some financing. But I'm
Maybe
sure
we could get some
I'm sure that
earmarks
didn't
from
happen.
Congress.
Yeah, let Tim trip over one of those wires or something and see where it goes. But
Yes, we struggle through all the environmental challenges to cover the sports news.
and the beauty of Blakesley is if it's really hot outside, it's really cold in the press box, and if it's really cold outside, it's really hot in the press box. So it's easy to plan for.
There we go. All right, I think we've rounded up a lot of the news and sports. Upcoming this Sunday, we've got an interesting Sunday package by Mark Fishnick about the Mankato Area Foundation has expanded its donation base tremendously in the last few years, and they have donor directed funds. So if you look at their list, it's 50, 60, 70 different people who can donate to different causes. And it sounds like there's kind of an application process. Your group needs money. You can think about this process. And our story is going to be about that and how the city of Mankato itself is putting together a wish list. So that might be worth catching. Otherwise, I think we're wrapping it up. We appreciate everybody for listening again. You can subscribe to great journalism by going to our website, MankatoFreePress.com. Hit the subscribe button at the top right, or you can just call us, 625-3764. We'll take your order over the phone, or you can contact Reader Service at readerservice@MankatoFreePress.com. We have a partnership with SPX Sports for reprints of sports photos, all the great sports photos from the East-West game. And you can just call them at 345-7196. There's also a link directly to SPX Sports, and you can see all the photos right on our website as well. There's a button that says buy photos. So thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, thanks. And thanks, Chad, for joining us. You should come back.
Highlight of my
Join
day.
us.
You should definitely come back next time.
Join us.
I'll be here.
All right. Thanks, folks. We'll see you next time.